I'm getting ready to do my taxes with a CPA, and as I was looking over the numbers for 2024, I realized that it was the best year so far being a full-time artist. And as I'm here in the studio, I'm working on a new solo show coming up. And so I primed these canvases and I figured, okay, this is great. I can do a video. As I was going through what actually worked, why was 2024 such a big year for me? And I've pinned down a few things that I've adjusted in my practice to enable me to have this good of a year. I wanted to share just in case some artists might find it helpful. I want to start off by saying there are many ways to be an artist today, and it really starts with self-awareness. Most artists tend to really romanticize the full-time being an artist life, and the ultimate goal for them is to eventually become a full-time artist. Now, I absolutely love this life. I wouldn't have any other way. But I wanted to share some truths with you that can maybe be the unlock for some of you watching. The truth is, if it doesn't eat at you to be a full-time artist, or if you're laying in bed and looking at the ceiling and that's all you can think about is your art and what you're going to do and how you're going to run your studio and adding creativity to the studio, then it's probably not for you being a full-time artist. It is hard. And it has to be a borderline obsession, because you do become an entrepreneur running a practice. And if it's not in your bones, it will be a constant uphill battle and you will eventually burn out from it. I think it's important for other creatives to understand that don't be scared to try to find what aligns with you and pivot when need be. Some people genuinely thrive as artists having something on the side. It can be teaching, it can be working for a graphic design firm, it can be exclusively working with galleries, something that takes care of your financial needs outside of your studio practice, and everything that you do in the studio is just a benefit or a bonus. If you are like that, then absolutely get a job to subsidize your income that also doesn't suffocate your creativity. I think it's so important to understand that many truths can exist in one. The faster artists realize what aligns with them, they will approach their practice with a lot more confidence instead of continuously second guessing or looking at somebody else online that's saying, oh my God, they're doing this, I want to do this, and really understanding, why do I want to do this? For most artists, I find it is easier for financial side to be taken care of, that you have your health insurance needs met and you don't have to stress out making rent every single month. It works for many, many artists. And that does not make them less than. It's just a complete different shift in how you run your practice. But if after hearing this, you're still like, no, I'm gonna attempt at doing this full time, amazing, then this video is for you. Obviously, I highly recommend it because for me, it's in my bones. I viscerally cannot work for someone else. It does not align with me. I've been working for myself for 9 years now. That is the only way. It makes me feel excited getting up every morning, exercising my creativity in different respects. My favorite thing about running my own studio practice and working for yourself is the person you become in the process of learning how to do it. It's one of the biggest transformations and opportunity for growth. It not only requires grit and perseverance, that's a given, but it also requires your ability to change your mind. If something's not working, what else can I try that's working? It has the ability to not judge yourself. And the most important thing is you stop hearing outside voices. Yays or nays, you stop hearing them because your goal is higher than any of the other people's opinions. And the truth is, nothing's guaranteed. And the reason I absolutely love running my own studio practice is emails like this. I will put it on the screen because I received it last week. This is so cheesy. It genuinely brought tears to my eyes because my work resonated so deeply with another person. And it's such an intoxicating feeling for me, which is why I love when people collect from artists directly. You build that relationship and they'll tell you what aligned with them with this piece, and it's something that you probably didn't even think about as you're creating. And that's something that I don't experience when working with galleries. I love working with galleries too, but only when it's mutually beneficial, when it's a win-win, not because I'm desperate to sell work. And I think that's when your studio practice shifts, or for me, my goal is alignment. For those of you who are still here, I wanted to share with you what really worked for me in 2024 and how I'm bringing that along with me in this year and structuring my practice. I want to start by saying, obviously, full-time artists, part-time artists, and hobby artists are going to have very, very different goals. I'm going to share my experience doing this full-time. When it comes to doing this full-time, there's nobody in the studio telling you what to do. You are the driving force behind everything. I firmly believe that if you want to be an artist who shows their work regularly and actually making a living, it's absolutely important that you build your own foundation of how others, collectors, and supporters can connect with you personally. What I found is the goals that I have for the studio tend to be structured like this. Instead of structuring your goals for the whole year, I structured it quarterly. I read a book. It's called a 12-week year. This 12-week year method works so well because you get to actually see your goals. 90 days, if you're looking at a quarter, it's a lot more tangible for you to say, okay, this is quarterly, what are my goals? Personally, I try to have a series done every quarter. Because I'm doing this full time, obviously I have the bandwidth to do this because I get to paint 8 to 10 hours a day, no problem. And for this quarter, ask yourself, what are the 3 to 4 very important things that I'm going to accomplish in the studio? For me, I have either 1 or 2 studio goals and 1 or 2 personal goals. When my goal is to have a new collection completed every 90 days, then I will structure where is going to be my drop happening? What are my limited edition prints are going to release? And with projects that take longer than 90 days, then you structure it. It's like, what part of this project would I want to accomplish in these 90 days? And breaking it down into the 3 months period, I found that I get a lot more accomplished than doing a whole yearly plan, because the possibility of you procrastinating is much, much higher when you look at it over a year. Number 2 is a weekly review. That I didn't implement until September, and I have to say from September of 2024 to December, I did about 70% of the whole year. And it's so embarrassing to admit that it was such a drastic difference, but I think I figured out why. When you do a weekly review, you sit down and say, what are the most important aspects that I need to accomplish during this week? 3-4 items. And what happens is, during those 3-4 to-do lists is when you get to focus. When you go into the studio, you know exactly what you're going to be working on. This did wonders for my productivity and focus. It provided almost like a scaffolding for what to focus on, and then it makes it flexible. But at the end of the week, you get to sit down and you review what went right, what could you have done better, and what are your goals for the next week. And the great thing is that you can actually see how you're progressing for your quarterly goal. Every week, you will see the progression move closer to your 90-day goal. And that, I think, it clarifies and maybe makes the goal not as intimidating. Number 3, another important one, is establishing goal selection versus goal efficiency. We often think productivity is about efficiency, as in how fast I can get there. But what really moves the needle for your goal is deciding on what you are working on to further along this goal. Your choice of things that you're working on will determine success or failure in the studio practice. I have done this so many times. I'm gonna spend 4 or 5 hours fixing the way my website looks, or researching what are the hashtags to use, for instance, for my posts. Although that is important, but that's secondary. The most important thing in your studio is actually the work. And so oftentimes this is a crutch for us to procrastinate when we work and we do a lot of research. And I have done this so many times, being stuck in research mode and no action. And when I decided to do the weekly review, it completely shifted for me, because I looked at it as action. Because it's so easy for us to feel like, I'm efficient, but you're really not moving any closer to your goal. And then the whole year passes and you're just like, it just feels like I was doing a lot of busy work, but none of the goals are actually completed. This is so incredibly important for those artists who want to do this full time, to really understand and implement in their practice. It will completely transform your days. Number 4 is, I think I've already talked about this in another video, but keep promises to yourself. Do the things that you set out to do. I've talked about this in another video about the habit of keeping promises to yourself. Whenever there's an outside accountable person, we tend to keep the promises to them more than we keep the promises to ourselves that we make. Because when you're an independent artist, you don't have anyone else to be accountable to. You only have yourself to be accountable to. Every morning when I go into my studio, I asked, what is the most important thing to work on today? This is when at the end of your studio day, you feel accomplished because you know you did what you set out to do for that day. Day by day, this all adds up to overall looking at the quarter and you're like, man, I hit that. And it creates this immunity to overwhelm. Number 5 is I've been working a lot on increasing my focus because I've realized the better my focus is, the more I accomplish in the studio. There's a book, it's called Indistractable, and it talks about the opposite of distraction is traction. And traction is doing something intentionally that moves you closer to your goal. And distraction is doing something that takes your attention away from that goal. And distraction happens when we intend to do one thing, but we end up doing something else instead. And number 6, this is incredibly important, and it does require a lot of self-awareness, is forgetting about the work-life balance. I know this is going to rub people the wrong way, but I'm just sharing what really worked with me. The work-life balance is essentially the idea that it's not possible to live a healthy life unless you separate work from other elements of your life, such as your personal life. And then you seek to establish equilibrium between prioritizing what's important for this and what's important for that. And the problem with this is that it established that work is separate from life, that somehow work is not truly living, that real life exists outside of your work. Over the course of history, especially industrialization of society, it viewed society as a machine. One's profession is divorced from their values, passions, intrinsic motivations, and so on. And it becomes an exchange of something you don't want to do, and in exchange, society provides a semblance of stability in exchange for you doing something you don't want to do. During your free time, you get to go do things that bring you joy. I think we need to completely customize this idea to ourselves, especially for artists. How many of you cooking dinner and you think about your art? How many of you are hanging out, doing mundane things, and all of a sudden this idea pops up and you're writing it down? They're not separate from your life. We're not like machines that we can just turn off this off button and then now, like, I'm done with studio work, now I'm gonna go do this. We are so multifaceted that all of these exist at the same time. And the problem is that a lot of times the perception of balance, we tend to globalize it. Like, this is what balance looks like. But balance looks very differently for different people. The definition of work is an activity or task involving mental or physical effort that is done in order to achieve a purpose or a result. By this definition, work is playing basketball as much as it is painting, as much as it is cooking. Work, it doesn't have anything to do with how much you get paid. It is the meaning, the purpose, and value level of the enjoyment while experiencing carrying a certain task out. For me, work becomes play when there's a combination. It's a holistic approach to the whole studio, what the life looks like as an artist. And understanding that one day you're only gonna go on an artist date and go to museums and go to coffee shops and go to vintage bookstores and just play and discover, and it's just as important as being in the studio painting. There's absolutely no cookie cutter approach. That I think the faster artists embrace that, they will become so fulfilled in their artist life. And I know some people think I'm so radical and too positive and unrealistic and maybe too optimistic, and it's true. I have so much hope for humanity and our capacity to change and grow and expand our consciousness. And more importantly, come back to the self, our ability to quiet the mind and hear, is this actually aligning with me? Do I have fun running a studio practice? And hard things can be fun if you have a big enough why. This whole saying, if you have a big enough why, you can suffer anyhow. It is so true, and it really applies to artists and their studio practice, because realistically, being a full-time artist, it's hard, but it's so fun and fulfilling on so many levels. There's so many things going on in the world today. It can be incredibly disheartening looking at all the news. In my opinion, it sets a point of activation of creating the world you actually want to see. To me, that is a big motivator. There's an article on BBC titled The 3.5% Rule, How a Small Minority Can Change the World. It's based on Erica Chenoweth, who's a political scientist at Harvard University. From her research and from her studies, the results are, it takes 3.5% of people to actively participate in the change that they want to make, enough for the ripple effects to be very real. And to me, that's so encouraging, because like Robert Henry said, the object isn't to make art. art. It's to be in that wonderful state which makes art inevitable. I hope this really helped you. Those are my things that I'm taking to 2025, and I will continue building on them, approaching my studio practice in a very holistic way, finding my own way to have win-win situations concerning my art, concerning my family, concerning the studio practice. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.